So a lot of questions I get asked is how do I do my time lapses on my Canon M50. One of the problems with the Canon M50 is the fact that you cannot plug in an external intervalometer into it. How do you get around that problem? So I'll tell you a little bit about that later on. So first of all anyway, most important thing when you're doing a time lapse is to take a tripod. I've come out here to the beautiful Bantry House. And I'm going to take a little bit of a time lapse here. Now unfortunately at the moment we have a lot of low-lying cloud in the distance, so the scene isn't perfect. I've got the house basically in front of me, and what I've had to do is I've had to set up my shot with most of the house in there, but there's not too many people here today, so you're not going to see much movement of people around the place. And with this low-lying cloud that's in the distance, that's just beyond the hills and the mountains over, there's not much movement in it. Even though it's a little bit windy today, there's not a whole lot of movement in it. This basically is the scene, and I'll show you basically what I've set up. Here we got my camera set up. It's an absolutely beautiful location. So right here at the top of the steps, we got some steps coming all the ways up, and what we've got is the house below and then those clouds in the distance. So this more or less is the way my scene is set up. So the settings that I'm actually using here at the moment, I'm not going to be able to focus in much on that. So I'm at f8 is what I'm shooting at, ISO 100. So the f8 basically so that we can get everything in focus. That's because it's such a wide angle lens. So I'm using the Sigma 16mm 1.8. So like I said, I'm at f.8 right now, 100 ISO. My normal exposure would be 1/400 of a second, but I prefer to shoot mine a little bit slower than that, especially if there's people around and stuff like that. So ideally for me, so that it's not choppy, I like to film at about anywhere between around 1/4 of a second to 1/2 a second, and that's going to give nice fluid smooth movement. So basically if I've got an app that's here, and if I am at 1/400 of a second, and if I add let's see here, so if I add my ND 128, that's going to give me roughly about 1/3 of a second. So at 1/3 of a second, that's going to be just perfect for me. So basically what I do next is, I said one of the problems is that the Canon M50 you can't use an external intervalometer with it. So there is an app that's actually, I'll put the link for it down below, and the app is actually called Intervalometer, strangely enough. So it's intervalometer for the Canon M50. So let me just do a quick screen record on this. So this is the app right here. So now what I want to do is, it's connected via Bluetooth. So with my camera on, settings are all ready to go. I'm at f.8, ISO 100, 1/4 of a second. My ND 128 filter is on. So I'm going to click connect. So my Canon M50 is now connected, and here I can select basically what the intervals are going to be. So because I'm only at 1/4 of a second, I'm going to shoot 2-second intervals, and now I could shoot a little bit longer, but just for demonstration purposes right now I'll shoot at 2 seconds. So then you see here you have the bulb, stop after X amount of photographs if you wanted to do that. So for me myself here, So I'm going to be at 25 frames per second. So if I wanted to do 2 seconds, it's going to be stopped after 250 photographs. And obviously I'm shooting in RAW as well. So just to go a little bit longer, I shoot at 750 pictures. Once I've that done, just hit start and it'll go ahead. Now unfortunately, one of the problems that I have with, it's a bit brighter, let me get out of the sun. So one of the problems that I have unfortunately with this intervalometer is that I cannot change any of the settings. So I can't go in and change my shutter speed while it's actually going. So you have to actually stop the camera, quickly change your shutter speed and go back again. Now at 2-second intervals, that's pretty hard to do. So it just runs away. You know, the intervalometer is a quick fix. It's okay. It's not the best in the world, but it gets the shots done. Sometimes what I've noticed is with longer times, longer intervals, like maybe 10 seconds or anyway up to 30 seconds, if you're shooting at night, that sometimes it can delay. So you might have a gap in between 2 shots that's more than your set interval, which isn't very good, especially when you're shooting clouds and stuff like that. You really do see the difference. So it's a quick fix for right now, especially for the Canon M50. So again, to go over the setup, so I have my Canon M50 on the tripod, full manual mode. So when I originally got set up, I was at 400 of a second and put on my ND 128 filter, which allowed me to slow it down to 1/4 of a second. Now at 1/4 of a second, we're going to have some good movement. So f8, ISO 100, using the intervalometer at 2 seconds. This is the setup. And now here's the result, and I hope you enjoy it.